Hey guys, welcome back to 48 Minutes or Less NBA Podcast, your weekly podcast for all things NBA delivered to you in less than 48 minutes. I'm Lewis, and joining me as always is the big man in the middle, Sawyer, and manning the point of attack is George. Hey guys, how you guys doing?
Hey man, what's up? How's it going?
Not bad. You, Sawyer?
Doing well. How about you guys?
So for this week, we just kind of wanted to run down to some things that have been happening in the NBA. After that, there was recent news about the NBA was looking to change possibly the way that the conference finals would be done, or maybe lower the amount of games or do an in-season tournament, and just kind of run through that and give our opinions on that topic. So to start out, I wanted to get you guys' opinions. The Lakers right now have won 7 straight games, and they have improved to 14-2 for the season. This is actually the best start in LeBron James's career. His previous one was in 2016-17 with the Cavs when he was 13-3, same as 2013-14 with the Heat. What do you guys think is working for the Lakers, and why have they been so good so far this season?
Well, I think it's good signs to come. I was pretty high on the Lakers team, and LeBron's showing that at 35 he still has it, and it also works because the team is working really well together. They're getting exactly what they need from the rotation pieces. You have Danny Green making threes. You have Dwight Howard buying into his role. You have Avery Bradley playing good defense. And then you have Kentavious Caldwell-Pope actually scoring for the first time in his NBA career. And Anthony Davis has just changed the defensive culture of that entire team completely. And you can really see the way they're playing defense. It's really impressive. Offensively, Davis might not be as powerful as he should be, but it's fine. I think they still have some stuff to figure out. But it's only going to get better. My only fear is that their egos get in the way, and you have Rondo getting upset about coming off the bench, or you have Dwight Howard start farting everywhere, and then it just sort of affects what they've had. And I'm waiting to see what happens if they go on a bad losing streak or they go on a bad road trip, see if there's any changes with the development of the team and with the coaching staff.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this is a good sign, especially considering they're doing this against quality opponents as well, and they are also playing really great defense too, which always helps. Especially helps with like long-term outlook on how the team should be going forward. It's not LeBron carrying them every single night. You know, it's LeBron and Anthony Davis together, and then everybody else kind of plays their roles. I believe that this is probably a better team that they've put around him. It reminds me a lot more of the Cavalier teams earlier on that he had when he came back the second time. Where it's a lot of like older guys, but they're quality players that play pretty good team defense and can shoot the ball, which is a lot better than what they had last year. They still could like have some tweaks and stuff. I feel like they definitely need maybe like another guard.
It would be great if they can somehow manage to get Andre Iguodala, but I feel that Memphis is going to be asking for a lot out of him, and he's going to be highly suited after by a couple of teams who can probably offer more than the Lakers can.
Yeah, Iguodala would be a great addition to the team and would kind of be kind of hilarious, in my opinion.
I mean, where do you guys think is the most likely place that he could end up?
I'd say the Lakers.
I'm thinking if for me it's if Memphis decides to waive him, he'll probably choose either the Lakers or the Clippers.
Or it's also a chance for Portland as well.
Yeah, if he gets traded, I would probably think Denver that would offer the most for him as a player.
I actually know, now that I think about it, a reunion with Denver, I believe, would actually really help the Denver Nuggets out a lot. They could actually really use that small forward, power forward, whatever kind of player that can bring like a nice spark off the bench or even start for them. They're kind of thin a little bit at that position.
Yeah, and the one thing that they're missing is that one like LeBron Kawhi defender, because they have Jeremy Grant, but he's not really fast enough to guard that 3 position. So getting a guy like Iguodala could actually boost their chances come playoff time.
Yeah, because he can switch on to LeBron, he can switch on to Paul George, he probably even guard Anthony Davis a little bit as well, along with Kawhi.
Yeah, because I would think because Malik Beasley becomes a restricted free agency come summer, so my guess is that they could get a package around Malik Beasley. Memphis would be more than happy to trade Iguodala for that and whatever they need to match salaries.
Yeah, I would also say if they're looking to trade, it's going to be the Clippers are less likely to get it because I feel like the Clippers are more looking for a center that could actually defend a guy like Anthony Davis, because even though Harrell's great, he can't defend Anthony Davis, and that's going to be their biggest opposition going up against the Lakers in the playoffs. On the other hand, if they trade for Iguodala, that's going to be beneficial because they could have Iguodala taking some minutes to defend like LeBron, but they still already have great wing defenders. So it's not as necessary for them. I think they'd rather get Iguodala in like the buyout market. On the other hand, a team like Denver or Portland, or even Houston, who needs someone to be able to defend these wings. The problem is I don't think Houston could give up enough. Denver's probably the team that can give it the most because they have young players and they have picks as well.
They're probably the more appealing option when it comes to younger players and picks, especially considering that Houston already traded a number of picks to OKC for Westbrook. I'm pretty sure we can agree though that just there are a lot of teams out there that would love to have Andre Iguodala on their team. I mean, you could say any contender would like to have him. Milwaukee, Milwaukee would love to have him on their team. Toronto, Toronto would love to have him on their team. Or 76ers, the 76ers would love to have him on the team because he's just that kind of guy that if you can get him, you get him.
Well, I don't think the Knicks would like to have him because the Knicks only like 4s. And Iguodala's a 3.
I said teams that have a chance of competing.
Should we change the name of the podcast from 48 minutes or less to Let's Make Fun of the Knicks for 48 minutes or more?
Yes, you can actually make fun of the Knicks for an
That's
entire...
too easy.
It's too easy.
An entire series dedicated to making fun of the Knicks.
We'll table that talk for later. Maybe start a podcast later on solely about how much the Knicks suck.
The Wildcats from High School Musical could beat the Knicks, straight up. Like in the game.
Okay, that's a little much.
I would take the Wildcats in 4 games.
That wouldn't happen because the Knicks would actually have to make the playoffs first. Actually, talking about Andre Iguodala, who's a great player that's nearing the end of his career, I think we should talk about a great player who's just starting his career. I don't know if we've talked about him much over the last few podcasts, but if you guys haven't heard of him, his name is Luka Doncic, also known as Wonder Boy, and he just became the youngest player to have a 40-point triple-double. He's the first player to have a 35-point triple-double in under 30 minutes, and the youngest player to have 3 30-point triple-doubles. And then last night as well, he just destroyed Houston.
Yeah, and not only that, just the fact that the Mavs, and it's not even that they're playing over, like the Mavs themselves aren't playing bad basketball either. They're tied with the Bucks for the best net rating. They're outscoring opponents like 8.9 points per 100 possessions. It's a lot different for me than like when Westbrook was seemed like he was playing this way, where he was just kind of carrying the team. It definitely feels different, especially considering that it seems like the team around him is playing well as well.
They do have what I would say the best bench in the NBA.
What I do find pretty amazing is the fact that they're like they're running a 117 offensive rating, which is number 1 in the NBA. And that's actually 5 points better than the Washington Wizards, who are number 2. And that's with Porzingis still kind of getting his feet wet after missing like 18 months of NBA basketball, which is amazing. And what Luka Doncic has done for that team, being just running the complete offense through him and then them actually winning games, is really impressive for a second year. And that's why I think lately the conversation has been around him and like, is it too early to already call him a top 7, top 8 player in the NBA? Or is he already playing like one of those top guys that you can build a championship around?
It's starting to get to the point where you have to admit that he's definitely a top 10 player just because he's done it so consistently throughout the year. He hasn't given us any pause to think that he can't continue doing this well. I mean, but like you said, Porzingis is also, he's not doing, like he still has gotten like, if I'm not mistaken, like 4 double doubles at least in the last like 4 out of 5 games, something along those lines. So he's not playing bad. It's just we know he could even be better, and that's what's crazy.
Yeah, like to think that he's at least on the defensive end, he's been a little slow to start the year. And once he can rack up that defense to what it was in New York, their defense will only go up, and then Dallas is going to be a real threat. They'll probably be that one team that you don't want to face come playoffs, because guarding Luka for 7 games is going to be a tough matchup for any player in the NBA.
Yeah, I think his game will hold up well in the playoffs, but I'm also a little worried about it because he doesn't have the most reliable shot. And once teams start scheming against him, it might affect him in the playoffs. I don't want to say he's a top 10 player yet because I want to see him at the biggest points in basketball, the biggest games. Because it's not hard to... Oh, it's hard, obviously. They're NBA players. But it's not as hard in the regular season as it is in the playoffs. And so for me to say he's a top 10 player would be moving out a player like Paul George or a player like Damian Lillard, who has shown time and time again for many years that they can play at this consistent level. So I have him almost in the margins of like, if he can perform well in the playoffs this year, if they do make the playoffs, which I think they will now, then maybe I'll move into a top 10 spot, which would be insane though, because he's still only in his second year.
Considering the second half of the bottom of the West is kind of looking like the 7th or 8th seeds will probably be near 500. Looking like the Phoenix Suns, Sacramento Kings, those guys kind of battling it out for that 8th seed. I'm pretty sure that Dallas will make playoffs this year. And watching Luka Doncic take on the playoffs for the first time in his career is going to be a fun watch.
Yeah, I would love to see them versus the Lakers in the first round. Just see LeBron versus Luka. That would be very interesting, especially since LeBron is Luka's favorite player.
So with Luka Doncic's play as of late, I can say with pretty good certainty that I'm pretty sure the Dallas Mavericks will make playoffs this year. One team that's at the cusp in the Eastern Conference is the Orlando Magic, who's currently 6-9, putting them in the 8th seed as of today. They just suffered an injury to Nikola Vucevic, seems like an ankle sprain. Reports show that he should be evaluated in about 1 to 2 weeks, and then moving forward from there. How do you guys feel about the injury? Doesn't seem too severe, but with them not really having much depth at the center position, a couple of games here or there, it could put them on the outside looking in come playoffs.
I think it gives Mo Bamba a chance to get some quality minutes in and hopefully turn his season around. I know he hasn't really been doing all that well, and hopefully this gives them a chance to actually get a look at him, but I don't think it's going to hurt their chances nearly as much. I think that they're going pretty well in terms of the development of their players. I think Markelle Fultz hasn't actually looked all that bad, and Jonathan Isaac's really coming along really well. He's had a pretty good year so far. His offense is still kind of coming around, but he's playing really good defense.
Yeah, I would say the thing I'm most worried about is actually their offense. They're already one of the worst offensive teams in the NBA, and losing Vooch, who's probably the best offensive player, will hurt them. And also, Markelle Fultz is playing really well, but it also has a lot to do with being able to play pick and roll with Vooch, and then he's going to lose that ability as well.
Without Vooch, it can affect spacing because Mo Bamba, while he looks like he can shoot, he hasn't really proven it. And Markelle Fultz operates really well in space, so not having that extra spacing for Vucevic could affect their offense a lot.
I would actually consider, if I was them, to maybe even start DJ Augustine alongside Markelle Fultz, lose their defense a little, and then just play small ball 5 with Isaac at 5 and still have Mo Bamba coming off the bench, because I feel like starting Mo Bamba is just going to be an easy way to lose more games.
Yeah, but the way I look at these kind of injuries for when it comes to these 1 to 2 week injuries for players, I think I look at it as a really good opportunity for some players on teams to get some reps in, get some minutes in, to kind of find their way a little bit. I mean, I feel like a few years ago when the Celtics had the rash of injuries with Gordon Hayward, then later on with Kyrie Irving, it allowed a lot of players to kind of flourish a little bit because they were getting some extra minutes in. Those injuries were for like a longer period of time than 1 to 2 weeks, but I was just using it as an example of using it as a way to help teams improve a little bit and at least see what they have. Like Denver last year actually as well. Denver had a number of injuries go on, but it allowed their bench to get some quality minutes in and get some time in, and I feel that helped them in the long season.
Yeah, I think the perfect example of that would be a couple of years ago where David Lee got injured, and that allowed Draymond to kind of take the starting power forward role. And since then, he never gave it up. So sometimes injuries could be a blessing in disguise if it allows you to see the potential of some of your players. One thing about Orlando that's kind of been in the talks is they've actually shown some interest in DeMar DeRozan and acquiring his talents. I'm not sure if I would do that if I was Orlando, but what do you guys think about them possibly making a big trade, which is something that seems like they've been trying to work on for a while, because they haven't really haven't acquired that like star player. But I don't know if DeMar DeRozan is that guy.
I think I'm actually liking how they've done how they've built a little bit the last year or two. It seems like they finally have a direction that they're going, and I don't think that they need to hurt. Like a lot of teams think like, hey, we're doing a little bit better than we normally are. Like let's really like bank on this and keep it going as long as we can. And that doesn't always work out. Keep developing the players you have. I mean, if you can get DeRozan for a decent price, it doesn't hurt, but you shouldn't bank on him being the player to send you over the top, because I don't think that they really should be thinking about like making a deep playoff run. I believe they could look at easily making the playoffs again. It's very likely. It's relatively the same team that they had last year, and Jonathan Isaac's actually playing a lot better. And the East is also weak, but I don't think DeMar DeRozan's going to be a player to just get them like into the finals or the conference finals. He's not really that kind of player. He won't drastically change the team.
Yeah, he raises the floor, but not the ceiling very much.
Yeah, and he has enough playoff experience and enough playoff minutes to know that he just isn't like someone you can rely on in the playoffs. He's been schemed against time and time again. He can't spread the floor. If they can somehow convince him to start shooting threes, then I think he'll be good. I don't think he would be a bad 3-point shooter. He just doesn't take them. And the Spurs are a team that lets people just do what they're best at, so they haven't convinced him to start taking threes. If Miami can start doing that, Miami needs more offensive power, and a guy that isn't going to spread the floor is not going to help that. It also will deter away from Markelle Fultz's game, because now Markelle Fultz needs the spacing since he can't shoot threes. So now you're going to add another guy, and who are you going to give up for him? Because of the money, you might have to give up Fournier, who does spread the floor, or you might have to give up Augustine, who does spread the floor, or you might have to give up Aaron Gordon, who's at least a defensive powerhouse, and then you're losing your defense for maybe a little more offense. So you got to think about all this stuff when considering the trade. It just seems like it would be a desperate move that ends up getting you knocked out in the first round anyway.
Yeah, is it Aminu? Is it Aminu or is it Harkless that's on Orlando right now?
Aminu.
Yeah, so I mean, I think Aminu. If anything, I think Aminu would be a part of that kind of deal with DeRozan. If anything, I could see it being something along the lines of Aminu and Fournier and like maybe a first round protected pick or something like that. That's the kind of deal I can imagine that the Spurs would like, because they would be able to replace DeRozan's shooting and actually slightly better shooting, because it was 3-point shooting with Fournier. But they also gain that defense with Aminu, who can also spread the floor some.
Like, Orlando already deals so much with spacing issues that I just don't know if DeMar DeRozan is that guy. And I guess it could kind of resemble that Blake Griffin trade that Detroit did a couple of years ago. But I just don't see that having as much of a ceiling as that. And even the Blake Griffin trade, Detroit's still in the same place it was before the trade. They're still trying to grab the 8th seed.
Yeah, I like what you said before about like DeRozan doesn't raise the ceiling, it just raises the floor. It's the same thing. It just, by getting DeRozan, you're like, okay, we're making the playoffs. But it doesn't push you over the edge. It doesn't.
DeMar DeRozan for OG Anunoby and Marc Gasol.
Return back to Toronto. I don't think Toronto would trade OG Anunoby for DeMar DeRozan. Like, I don't know if that's what, like, Orlando, I guess the front office might be trying to just, after not making playoffs for so many years and seeing some success, they're kind of that position where they want to not take a step back, continue making playoffs. But living in Orlando and as a fan, I can tell you that I would not want DeMar DeRozan. I feel that they should keep developing the young talents. And I want them to kind of start playing Jonathan Isaac more at the 5, because I think that could be his real position, because he can be a difference maker on the defensive end at the 5 position, and playing 5 would really round out his game. I mean, at the same time, they just re-signed Vucevic, so that doesn't seem like the direction they're heading in, and that's fine if they want to compete for a while, because Orlando has like a mix of older players with a lot of young players, so they're kind of like in a weird position, an influx to develop their young talents, like Isaac, like Bamba, like Fultz, or to contend with their older talent like Fournier, Vucevic, and DJ Augustine. So it's a weird place.
Do you guys think they should consider trading Aaron Gordon? I feel like right now, with the way that the two best teams in the NBA, arguably the two best teams in the NBA, are forward, have 3 of the best forwards in the league, and you have Aaron Gordon, who's a good defender against forwards. Do you think there's a team out there that could give a pretty hefty price for him? And I think Aaron Gordon's a good basketball player, but he hasn't really seen that big growth and development. Every year I feel like I'm waiting for him to show something different, and he just isn't there yet offensively. And I think this is pretty much how he's going to be the rest of his career. A good starter, but nothing more than that. Maybe make one all-star appearance in the East kind of player.
I don't see Aaron Gordon as a player that a lot of teams are really looking for. I can't think off the top of my head a team that would trade for him.
Another player that on Friday night had to be stretched out the floor was Kemba Walker for the Boston Celtics, where he ran in head first and suffered a sprained neck when he hit other fellow teammate Semi Ojeleye. And watching it looked really, really bad. Like the kind of injury that you're like, oh my God, is that guy okay? Luckily, he's only day-to-day and should be nearing his return either this week or maybe the beginning of next week. It's lucky that we don't have another star player suffering a really major injury. What do you guys think about the injury?
Yeah, I'm just glad it wasn't necessarily any life-threatening or anything along those lines. Anytime you see an injury like that, especially when it anything to do with the neck or head, and a stretcher has to come out onto the floor and everything, you never want to see that. You never want to see that for any player, anybody. I'm glad he's going to be good and fine, and it's not going to, hopefully not have any long-term effects on his career. Let's be happy for how not injured he is, I should say.
How well it turned out.
Yeah, how well it turned out. That's the wording I needed.
I don't know if he'll be back by Wednesday to go up against the Brooklyn Nets when Kyrie makes his return, even though Kyrie will not be playing that game because he's out with his own knee injury. It's just a good thing. The Celtics can kind of continue and they won't lose any more footing considering they've already lost Gordon Hayward. And the more injuries they have, the less depth they can maintain.
So for the second half of the podcast, we want to talk about the NBA has been proposing some coming changes to the schedule and the way the regular season works, as well as some playoff changes. I think we'll first start talking about the changes to the schedule. So the proposition would be that we shorten the schedule from 82 games to 78 games, but then in about November have what's sort of like a mid-season tournament where some of the teams play, and they'll play for bonuses. Coaches will also play for bonuses, and it's sort of shorter the schedules, but then also adds kind of like I would say soccer element to the NBA, and it could be, I think, the first step in what is to come of a shorting of a season to make it maybe 70 game seasons or something. What do you guys think about the proposition for the upcoming season?
I like the idea of reducing the number of games in the season. I'm glad that they're seriously considering it. I know they're trying to have it finish by the anniversary of the NBA. Regardless, I'm glad that they're at least looking at this, and the idea of like a little mid-season tournament isn't all that bad. I mean, I believe from what I understand of it is at most in that little tournament, they'd be playing like 3 games at most is how many games they would play in that tournament if that team made it to the tournament. Because I think from what I remember, not all teams would make it. It allows some teams obviously to play less, but it helps make up for some of the revenue lost for some teams. So I'm glad that they're looking into that. I just don't see it happening that soon. I mean, I think it's a great first step that they're actually talking about this, but it's not something that will... I don't think it could get fixed in time for that. I think it's something that's a little further down the road.
I'm just wondering a little bit, like, have they decided yet, or have any reports been released about how they're actually going to decide which teams participate in the tournament?
It has something to do with division games and there being like a pseudo like division winner in a way up until that point. And then so there's going to be 6 divisional winners, and it's going to be based on home and road records in that group stage. And the 2 teams with the next best records would advance in a single game elimination knockout round. And so then those teams could each potentially compete in the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals, which would mean that's 3 extra potential games, which would bring the total to 81 instead of just 78. It would count like it'd be like a tournament happening from the beginning of the season up until that point, but they will count those as regular season wins until the actual tournament.
So it's like a tournament in a tournament.
Exactly.
Tournamentception.
I just wonder, like, if the incentives are just going to be bonuses, if that's going to be enough to get players motivated for that.
I was actually thinking, like, it would be pretty interesting if I never see the NBA being progressive enough to do this, but almost like playing for more national televised games. So like the winner gets like a boost in the next year's in the upcoming seasons, like televised games. So they'll have more televised games.
I was thinking something more around the lines of, like, say the winner, so the team that wins, if that said team makes playoffs, they are allowed to choose their first round opponent.
No, I don't like that. I
don't
think that works very well with that. If anything, I think what would be better is that the winner of the tournament would then automatically make the playoffs.
I guess, but like I'm guessing the team that would be winning is already pretty much going to make the playoffs.
So let's say I'm the Lakers and I win. I'm just going to sit out Anthony Davis and LeBron James for the rest of the season.
Yeah, exactly. It's just going to lead to more players being set out.
Now, I like the idea of having, if you win the tournament, or if you make it, say, if the two teams that make it to the finals will have more, I guess, nationally televised games the next year. I kind of like that idea.
About the team that wins the tournament is certified, is given home court advantage in the playoffs.
Similar to how it used to be with division. So like if you won back in the day, if you won your division, you would like guaranteed a play. You were guaranteed a home court advantage.
Yeah, so let's say you're like the third seed, but you won the tournament. You're still given home court advantage. So it actually would be interesting because I I feel like a lot of teams right now, because like you look at the Clippers, for instance, they like don't necessarily care about home court advantage because of seeding, because they'd rather sit out Kawhi, but they might care if there's a tournament they can give them home court advantage and they could sit out Kawhi at an extra, I guess, level. Actually, I really like that one.
I don't, because it's the same thing with like a team making it automatically, so they don't have to worry about getting a higher seed. They could just be the 8th seed if they really wanted to, and they would have home court.
Why would you want to be the 8th seed and play the first seed?
No,
though?
but the whole point.
Like,
For example,
you still have a harder.
So for example, if say they were the 5th seed, right? So they wouldn't care about, or say they were their 5th seed and there was 6 games left, and there was no chance for them to fall below 5th, right? All they were doing was fighting for 4th in order to have home court advantage. Now they don't really care. They're just gonna sit out their play. They're just gonna.
No, but it's not about home court advantage. What people care about seeding. It's about your match. If you're like the Houston Rockets and you won the tournament and you're like, I don't care, I could be a seed. Why would you want to be a seed and play the Lakers the first round? You'd still want to be, even if you have.
But George, it's the same thing as the argument you made with Sawyer's thing. Why would, if Sawyer you instantly make playoffs, and why would you still sit those star players if it's about matchup? It's the exact same thing as the instantly making playoffs.
Yeah, but already people sit star players because of matchup. Like they're trying to lose a game so they can get a better matchup, but they're trying to win a game.
It's the same concept though. All they're gonna do is it's the same concept.
I think the better idea is the one you said first, with the idea of the fact that the teams next year that the 2 teams that make it to the finals the next year have better nationally televised games. Like they have a little more of them. Because I feel that's, plus players and coaches still get bonuses, because that helps the coaches, that helps the players, and it helps the owners because now they get a nationally televised game.
It helps the owners to motivate the coaches to then in turn motivate the players.
Exactly. It's a better motivational tool, I feel. And it doesn't affect that season, which I think is slightly better. Like it doesn't give a team, like I guess what you could say is like, then why bother playing in the tournament? I mean, I'm just saying, like, if you were giving such a significant boost to a team when they make it to the playoffs, I get that, but also,
and I guess like for a team like the Lakers, since they already get like 41 nationally televised games a season, it's not a big deal. But for teams like Memphis, Sacramento, Orlando that aren't big markets, it can really boost their fan base by getting more nationally televised games.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm pretty sure the Lakers would have won 52 nationally televised games over 41.
Yeah, but it incentivizes to like kind of like for small market teams because small market teams at the moment don't really have,
or even you're guaranteed every marquee day. So like you'll play the first day of the season. You'll play Christmas Day. You'll play Martin Luther King Day. That'd be pretty. That wouldn't necessarily be national. I mean, they were going to be national, but you're like given every marquee day of the season.
or you're guaranteed at least a marquee game.
The team that wins the tournament gets to take one player from another team.
LeBron James, please come here.
Overall, I feel that shortening the season, 78 games seems like a decent first step. I'll say that it at least gives the opportunity to possibly reduce it, because even just getting rid of those those 5 games already eliminates a couple, maybe like 1 or 2 back-to-back games.
Yeah, it'll help with removing back-to-back games. Unless you're like one of the teams that like is killing it. That's the one problem. The teams that really care about load management are probably gonna be the teams in the tournament.
Yeah, that's probably what's gonna happen. Well, no, because like the teams that if you load manage too much, you won't be in the top of your division, and then you won't make the tournament.
I mean, I think regardless, even if the tournament part doesn't completely go right, the idea that they're at least thinking about it, we can all agree, is a good first step. Now, when it comes to the other proposals with the stuff involving the playoffs, where you have like kind of like you have a wild card games essentially at the for the final 2 spots in the playoffs. So you have the 7th and 8th seed would play, and the winner would then have the 7th seed. The 9th and 10th seed teams would play each other, and then they would the winner of that game would then face the loser of the 7 and 8 game to be able to be the 8th seed in the playoffs. And then on top of that, they also were talking about reseeding the conference finals, so that way the conference finals, the 4 teams that make it, get reordered based on record. So that way, like, you potentially could have 1 West, 1 East team in one finals, and then the other 2 in the other. So you could easily have a completely Western finals or a completely Eastern finals. So I think that is actually really interesting. That way it has the potential to make sure that the 2 best teams, regardless of conference, actually make it to the finals.
At least for the first one, kind of my only issue with that is that it kind of helps promote the idea that a lot of people already believe, which is that the regular season doesn't matter. So like that's just saying, hey, these last 4 teams have to do a tournament. And yeah, the teams that actually are the 7th and 8th seed have more of a chance than the 9th and 10th. But it still promotes the idea that like, who cares if you won 30 games? If you're the 10th seed, you can still make playoffs. So why does the regular season really even matter? Which is already something that the NBA is struggling with the load management fact that like if us as fans start realizing that the regular season doesn't matter, they're going to start selling less tickets. So I don't necessarily like the idea of doing like a mini tournament to decide who makes 7th and 8th seed.
I mean, it kind of sucks, but in a sense, like if 2 teams, the 8th and 9th seed, have the same record, then they already did play a tournament during the regular season, and whoever won most, and they have like a tiebreaker, right? So if you play 3 games and we have the same record, and we play 3 games and you won 2, you already did beat me, so you deserve the spot, not me. Which is what happens with the Timberwolves in Denver. Like they were playing for the tiebreaker.
Yeah, I just think it's an interesting idea that they're thinking of. I don't think, like I said, like very low chance it ever gets passed, but it's a very interesting idea that could allow some teams that got unlucky with injuries, instead of just giving up on the season, there's a chance they can at least make it to the playoffs. Yes, it's to get swept, but making it to the playoffs for some teams is important.
Yeah, I mean, you get two home games that brings in money, but like I said, that's what the regular season's for. Like the regular season is like teams that are like Detroit that are pushing for playoffs, even though they know they're going to get swept. They're already fighting for it during the regular season, but they can just get the 10th seed, take it easy, rest more.
Yeah, it also kind of like makes teams say like, hey, we don't actually have to work on building our team up and management and getting the right management to become playoff teams. You can just be the 10th seed, and teams that are 10th seed for the most part, like it'd be different.
You're essentially banking on the fact that you're going to win a single elimination game. Like that, the chances are very slim.
Isn't that how college basketball works? Sometimes the best teams don't win because you're banking on one game.
There's also not that much of a discrepancy between the 7th and 10th seeds.
I mean, in the West, but in the East, there's definitely a discrepancy. I mean, do you want like the 10th seed's probably going to be like the Wizards? Do you want the Wizards in the playoffs over like over Orlando or over Brooklyn?
I mean, if they're good enough to win a single elimination game.
Yeah, but I want to see the best teams play. Last year, Phoenix beat Golden State. Is Phoenix a better team than Golden State?
So real quick, so last year in the East, the Pistons were the 8th seed with a 41-41 record, while the Heat were the 10th seed with 39-43. That's a 2-game difference, right? That's not that big. So like they're relatively the same quality teams. But in the Western Conference, the 8th seed was the Clippers with 48 wins, and the 9th seed was the Kings with 39 wins. That's a 9-game swing. So what happens if the Clippers on that marquee game, say last year, Lou Williams was hurt, and the Kings beat them? Now the Kings are starting playoffs when the Clippers won 9 more games than they did. That's not 1 or 2 games. That's 9 more games. And you're banking that your players are healthy.
If they lose, they do have a second shot.
I understand they have a second shot, but
they wouldn't though. If they lose, they wouldn't have a second shot because the Clippers would have lost to the Spurs, and then they would have lost.
No,
to the
he's
Kings
saying that the Kings were 9th.
And the Clippers were 8th, and 8 and 7 play, and then 9 and 10 play.
I just feel like you're kind of taking away like the achievement of, if you're like a Clippers fan, like getting the 48 wins is a really good team, and they were the AFC because that's how tough the West is. And now you're banking on, oh, my team's got to win 2 games, and if they lose both, we don't make playoffs, even though my team won 48 games and the Kings won 39. Like, I understand if it's like a 1 or 2 game swing, but like the Lakers were the 10th seed and 137.
Okay, let me ask you this. Would you prefer if this was the tiebreaker then? So if 2 teams were tied for the 8th and 9th spot, for example, would you prefer if there was a single, like another game, a single elimination game, and the winner of that game, because they have about the same record, but that use that as a first tiebreaker? Are you saying you wouldn't prefer that?
No, because they already have a tiebreaker because they play 3 games of the season. If you're in the same conference, you're going to play 3 games because you're only going to play 4 against teams in your own division. So, and you have division record. And then if you play in the same conference, you play 3 games.
I would actually be okay with this if we go to a 16 game, to a 16 team playoff where the teams in the bottoms are going to be all more joined together. Let's say the 15, 16, 17, and 18 seed all have the same record, but they're in separate conferences where they only faced each other once. That would make more sense to me. Like, but at the current way that it's set up, I don't necessarily know if it's fair for the teams because, like, like I said, like the Clippers won 9 more games than the 9th seed last year. That's not chump change. They were clearly a better team than the Kings were.
I think it's being considered this year because the West teams are so close. Like the 7th seed and the 12th seed aren't that far apart. I think that's why it's being considered. So I mean, it'd be more interesting, but I don't think it would be fair.
I can understand your guys' reasoning for not liking it overall. I actually think that using it as a tiebreaker, if teams have the exact same record, I feel is a better play. If it was to be anything, it's a better play-in thing than doing what we were just talking about. Like, because, for example, like you were saying last year with Denver and Minnesota, or 2 years ago with Denver and Minnesota having the same record, like, okay, if the first tiebreaker then was playing one more game, one elimination game to make it all, there would be so much hype around that in order for a chance, as opposed to, and it would be like, here's my team right here, right now, let's go. As opposed to, hey, I know the last time we played you was like 2 months ago, and and Jimmy Butler was out for that game, or Karl Anthony Towns was out for that game. But it's fine. You guys are better than us because you guys won that one game to make it a 2-1. But I think it might be. What if we play it all for one last game and give it our all, because we are the best team right here, right now.
I know the last time we played you was in December, and now we have Andre Iguodala. But you guys are better than we are.
Exactly. Like that. See, that's what I would say. The argument for, well, they already played each other 3 times. Okay, yeah, they played each other 3 times, but there's a chance the last time they played each other was 2 months ago.
That is true. Sometimes teams will play each other 3 times in 2 weeks.
Detroit and Pacers have played each other 3 or 4 times already. So and teams change, especially during those games, Blake Griffin wasn't available. That matters. The idea of hey, who's the best team right here, right now? Let's find out. And playing that one elimination game, make it even more interesting. Make it 1 half. Play 1 half, 24 minutes. You play 24 hard minutes.
Dude, I'm down for that.
Wait, 24 minutes, no fouls, half-court basketball, 3 players only. Blacktop, street ball, you can punch each other.
3s count as 2 points, and 2s count as 1.
I was just saying it as a way to make it more interesting, but you don't want people to get hurt.
How about we just do it? Each team sends their best player, and they play paper, rock, scissors, and whoever wins and makes playoffs.
Yeah, make fun of me. So fuck off.
They have, every year they get a 16th player that's good at rugby. No, I actually like that idea. I think your idea is good. It'll help boost energy. It'll be a really interesting game. Everyone that cares about basketball.
Yeah, and honestly, I could imagine it too, where it would be whoever if the 9th seed won that and got a chance to be in the playoffs, and now they're facing the Lakers. Maybe they're going to go into it with a little more energy, hey, we just won this last game that it was win or go home. Let's keep this momentum going.
And get swept.
And, it can make things a little more... Well, you never know. I'm just saying it can make things slightly more interesting. But I only think it'd be good as, a thing for, a win to get in kind of thing. It wouldn't be good for, if the 7th and 8th seed teams were tied. That's different. But if it's 8th and 9th, I think that is perfect. Because it wouldn't happen often, which would make it even more exciting if it did happen.
Though I would like let's say you're the 6th seed and I'm the 5th seed and we have the same record, we play for seeding. That'd be pretty cool.
I think it'd be interesting. I just think it adds too many other games.
So as for the other part about the conference reseeding at the conference finals levels, I kind of like that idea because 2 years ago, the 2 best teams were Houston and Golden State, and we couldn't really see that team in the finals. I mean, sometimes it works out because I would say last year Golden State and Toronto were the 2 best teams. But it kind of gives less probability and more chance for those 2 actually best teams making it to the finals.
I mean, to take last year, for example, so the way it would have worked out was that the Bucks had the number 1, right? They had the best record, and followed by the Toronto Raptors, followed by Golden State, and then it would follow that by Portland. Those are the 4 teams that made it, and that's the order they would be in the records. So you would have the Bucks versus Portland, and then you would have had Toronto versus Golden State. But you would have had that Toronto versus Golden State in the semifinals as opposed to the finals. And it makes things, I feel like that's a better matchup right there than when the Golden State just demolished the Portland Trailblazers. And I feel like the Trailblazers would match up okay-ish. They obviously can't guard Antetokounmpo, but I feel like the way it would have worked out is it probably would have been Toronto and Milwaukee in the finals, as opposed to for them playing in the conference finals last year. So that's how last year would have worked out in terms of who would have played who.
I mean, you could also argue that like Toronto would have faced Golden State when they were still a little bit healthier, because Klay did suffer that hamstring injury and then the ACL tear.
Yeah, but Klay suffered it like they were pretty much done anyway. Like they already lost like 3 times. Like it wasn't like in the beginning of the season. It would have been a more interesting place, like final to that season though, to that series, because Klay wouldn't have probably been out. My only concern is with ratings, because I was thinking about like, let's say like 2 years ago, let's say it would have been Houston and Golden State in the finals. Normally it's East versus West, so you have some games that are coming on at like 9 p.m. and then you have some games that are starting at like 7 for us in the East, right? If let's say it's Golden State and Houston playing, or Golden State and the Lakers playing, or let's say it's both the Lakers team, why don't those games just start at 10 p.m. and then if you're in the East, you're pretty much screwed. Like if it would start at 10 p.m. Yeah, it would start at 10 p.m. for us. They would either have to start those games at 6, but then you're gonna lose ratings because a lot of people have work the next day, so they can't be staying up till midnight.
I guess maybe that's something that the NBA has to kind of think about before they actually finalize this. How would it affect? Considering ratings were down last year just on the basis that LeBron was playing in the West. A lot of people watch LeBron. Casual fans watch basketball to watch LeBron. And what is it, like 65% of all basketball fans are in the East Coast?
Yeah, it's crazy to think how the East Coast has more basketball fans, but worse teams.
That's because most players, a ton of good players come from the West or want to play out West because the weather's nice.
So to your point about the timing change and stuff, I just want to bring up the fact that last year with the Warriors and Raptors, so they were like pretty much on opposite sides, correct? So the start time when it was at the Raptors, the start time in the Eastern time zone was at 9 o'clock. When they were playing actually not even when they were playing then, it was either at 8 or 9 o'clock. It wasn't very late. Like both, they started at that either 8 or 9 o'clock, and it didn't even matter where they were, because even if it was the Warriors, they still started that at 9 o'clock, even though it was over in California. So they usually do the finals at roughly about the same times. Anyways, it wouldn't really affect that all that much. If anything, it would only affect the conference finals.
So overall, I might not agree with all the changes that the NBA is proposing, but I'm glad that they're proposing changes. I'm just glad that Adam Silver is continuing to be progressive with new ideas and is constantly trying to see how they can make the NBA more popular and reach more people and make it more competitive and more fun for fans. And it's always good to see. And if this is a move towards shortening the season all in all, or making a more interesting playoffs, then I'm all about it. That's all that really matters. It's just more fun basketball.
Some of the ideas seem kind of out there and stuff like that, and seem very unlikely to actually happen. But at least they're thinking about stuff, and it sounds like some of the stuff, could benefit both fans and owners and the teams themselves. So it doesn't seem like it's very one-sided. So, but yeah, I agree. Adam Silver's doing a great job, and hopefully he continues to do a great job.
I mean, it's tough. Like, sometimes as fans, we put it in the perspective of like, oh, they should do this. It would make the NBA better. But like, as the guys that actually work in a business, the NBA is a business. So they have to look at it from all angles, not just how much enjoyment they can pull off, but if it's going to be profitable, if it's going to affect profits, stuff like that. So I like that, like, Adam Silver is always, and the NBA is always exploring new options and new avenues. Whether they come to fruition, it depends. But plus, it gives us something to talk about, right? About possibilities of how the NBA could be.
Yeah, it's a step in the right direction. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening to this week's episode of 48 Minutes or Less NBA Podcast. As always, please rate and review. We read all feedback. And share this podcast with your friends. Share it on Twitter. Share it on Instagram. Share it on Facebook. Share it on MySpace. It really helps us grow so we continue to release great content. And always, the best way to keep up to date with us is to hit that subscribe button. By hitting the subscribe button, it'll update you when we release our new episodes. We're trying to stick to the Tuesday, Wednesday format, but you never know. Some days we'll release a different day. So the best way is to subscribe. Anyways, have a great week watching basketball, and guys, have a happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone, or at least people in America. Hey, if you guys want, follow us on MindSpace and RuneScape.
You can download us illegally on LimeWire.
On LimeWire.